Hey everybody, ronarray here, and as GG announced PoE2 0.4 new league, it is a great time to finally discuss patch notes. So in this video, I wanted to showcase the biggest changes in my opinion and talk a little about how they're going to affect the current meta in the game and the game in general. Let's go, and I will be able to explain what caught my attention the most. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments what do you think about the patch notes. And first off, I think we should talk about maybe not the obvious, but a very important winner out of all the changes. It's pretty much Rhoa Mount. So Rhoa Mount no longer increases your movement speed, so you're losing movement speed that we had before on Rhoa. But now it will have a 100% reduced movement speed penalty from using skills while mounted, and previously it's been 80%. That change at the first glance could look not that good. However, since when you're running the Rhoa, you're constantly going to attack, and you're attacking non-stop anyway, I believe that that change is going to improve your movement speed compared to what we had before. So you're going to run faster than you've been running before, and that way running Rhoa Mount will be absolutely mandatory for almost all skills that can run Rhoa. I also believe some kind of skills that you will be unable to use on Rhoa is going to fall off at the moment, and skills that you can, such as like a lightning arrow or for example ice shot, even any kind of bow skills, is probably going to feel better because you will be able to utilize Rhoa, which is looking absolutely amazing with that change. Now let's talk about the changes for Monk. So first off, Invoker got mostly untouched and even slightly buffed. Protect Me from Harm will now grant only 35% less evasion rating. Previously, it's been 50% less. I think that change is going to feel very good, and it will give a pretty decent chance that Protect Me from Harm is going to replace meditation, especially in more like hybrid build variations. Soul Spring Eternal got significantly buffed as well, so right now, additionally, you will get like meta skill have 50% increased spirit reservation efficiency. It will make cast on critical builds to feel very good on Monk in general, and I believe that there are definitely going to be at least some builds with this. I'm probably going to work on some variation with that node myself, because I believe it looks very promising at the moment. Considering it's just a pure buff and you're losing absolutely nothing. And Unbound Avatar also got changed a little, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal because like there's still cooldown, and even in the best case scenario, you're going to have like 12 seconds uptime. The big deal for Unbound Avatar, I think it's going to help significantly with bosses, because since you will not get no more than once every 0.2 seconds for each type of ailment, it will be easier to stack Unbound Avatar on bosses, and since GG changing bosses and right now they're going to be a time when they will have like damage reduction, it will be easier to stack Unbound Avatar while they have the damage reduction and use it right after to unleash a big chunk of damage at the boss. I think that way Unbound is probably going to be more popular than it's been before, even if it's not going to jump significantly. Shocking and Igniting now will grant only one Unbound Fury, previously it's been 2, so I think it's mostly like rebalance. But with a very high attack speed, and especially if you're going to use like a Tempest Bell, I believe Unbound Avatar would have a better uptime than it had before. Talking about Acolyte of Chayula, Acolyte of Chayula got buffs across all the board, but I don't think it's going to change anything significantly, because at the moment the only big enough buff is Void Illusion skill granted by Grasp of the Void, because numbers are practically doubled, but I don't think that Void Illusion is providing that big damage chunk for most of the Acolyte of Chayula builds, and I think it's still going to stay a niche build at the moment, especially considering how good Invoker is looking. And another big deal is Hollow Palm changes, because I think it's going to affect monks significantly. So most of the monk builds that been not utilizing Hollow Palm is going to stay literally the same. However, for Hollow Palm there are definitely some changes coming. So right now, based unarmed attack time is going to be higher for Hollow Palm. It's 1.65 attacks per second and it's been previously 1.4. So you're going to be faster, especially when you don't have any kind of gear, and I think together with the scaling, it will keep Hollow Palm as a decent leveling approach to the monk gameplay. And 165 against 1.4 will provide approximately 18-19% of additional attack speed in the endgame. However, Hollow Palm Technique Keystone will grant 1% more attack speed per 75 item evasion on equipped armor, and previously it's been 25. So that speed that coming just from evasion rating on your armor is going to be lower. Considering my build, since I've been mostly playing evasion and energy shield hybrids, I don't think it's going to hurt the build significantly, especially considering that base unarmed attack is going to be higher. But I believe in the end we're going to be slower than we've been in 0.3. I'm going to do a separate video with additional calculations and discussing about that. So right now I consider it a nerf, but based on my initial calculations, an unarmed Hollow Palm builds should still be playable and still will be pretty fast, especially if you have a good enough gear. And another part is Invoker of the Wild Keystone completely removed from the passive tree. Since Mana Leech from Invoker of the Wild Keystone been a very important part for almost all melee builds that been around that node, I think it's going to hurt some particular skills, because it will be much harder to utilize the mana and you will need to add some particular things to the builds to fix that part. So it also will be moved into newly added lineage support, so for builds that are crazy mana hungry, I think just running the support is going to be an easier way, and other builds will probably just pick like mana on kill in the separate places, and it's going to make clear like significantly easier. I also want to remind you, if you're playing the monk and you're worried about mana on bosses, you can still use a Tempest Bow as a bossing option and leech the mana from Tempest Bow, because it's going to deal significant amount of damage which is leechable in that case. But I'm leaving that for the separate video that is coming a little later. Stay tuned for it, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in it as well. And another important thing that's going to affect the monk is Culmination support nerfs. So at the moment, Culmination 2 support will give you more damage per combo with a cap of 20. So most of the time before, to kill the boss fast, you've been reaching an amount of combo which has been like 70 to 100 based on how strong is your build. Since right now it will be capped at 20, it will lead to a situation when you will need to use your finisher such as Flicker Strike, for example, or Fallen Thunder at least twice to kill tougher bosses. I don't think it's going to destroy the idea completely, especially since you will need to wait out just a damage reduction phase anyway. But it's definitely going to feel less flashy at the moment. It will also grant 2% more damage per combo, it's been previously 3, but the biggest issue here is cap again. Now let's talk about another very popular Ascendancy, which is, in my opinion, is going to be very popular in 0.4 as well. It's Deadeye. So for Deadeye, you're losing Wind Ward, which being completely removed. If you can't remember that, Wind Ward been just giving you 3% less damage taken per Tailwind. So right now that's completely gone, and you will be unable to use it to boost your tankiness. However, it wasn't that popular, and I don't think that change is going to affect Deadeye too heavily. Bullseye will now require Cold Shot, and it will now apply 10 critical weakness, and previously it's been 5. I consider that is a pretty good buff, because it will be much easier to get like critical weakness up on bosses, and especially on random rares too, because you will practically double the generation. And you will also get Mirage Deadeye Ascendancy passive skill, which grants the Mirage Deadeye meta skill. It will give you, while active, fire in a range attack projectile will create a Mirage that uses socketed range attacks for a short duration. That's looking absolutely amazing for Deadeye, and I believe Mirage Deadeye skill is going to be pretty popular because of how much quality of life it can provide. It can help you with clearing, reaching monsters that you currently just running past, and it can also improve your damage too. We will need to see the numbers for Mirage Deadeye skill, but at the moment it's looking like Deadeye being generally buffed, which is very surprising considering how popular that class is. So, talking about the very important part of almost any Deadeye build is Lightning Arrow. So Lightning Arrow no longer bypasses the charge up time on Lightning Rod burst. I believe that higher conversion is going to make the damage more stable, and bypasses changes currently will require some additional confirmations, because it's very hard to predict how exactly it's going to work, since wording here is a little wibbly, especially since Lightning Arrow been working with chains before, and Lightning Rod amount is also lowered, so it's been like 20 to 10. I believe that those changes is feeling like a slightly nerf for Lightning Rod and Lightning Arrow combination. That nerf is mostly going to affect burst, because like less Lightning Rods, you can't bypass the charge up anymore, and it's going to make bossing with Lightning Arrow a little harder. However, amazing clear in the maps is going to stay and probably will be even improved because of the higher physical to lightning conversion, so I believe Deadeye will stay as a very good build for clearing the maps, and it's probably going to be very popular. Considering all the changes, I believe Deadeye in general is one of the biggest winners of the patch, especially since instead of Lightning Arrow, you can for example play Ice Shot, which is just generally buffed, so you're getting like 80% of physical damage to cold, and Cone Angle increased by approximately 50%. Another interesting thing that I've been using with Deadeye and currently buffed is Glacial Lens. So Frenzy Charge and Powered Explosion will deal more damage at the moment, which is very nice, and it will also have significantly more freeze build up, and Magnitude of Chill, you will get like a lot of additional Magnitude of Chill at the same number, like together with a freeze build up, and you'll get 80% conversion. It's previously been 60. So I believe like lens builds such as Glacial Lens could be an interesting touch to Deadeye as well. The biggest issue for such builds is just generating charges, which been nerfed before, and it's much harder to generate it now. Another Ascendancy which is going to get nerfed, mostly based on the build interaction, is Blood Mage. So as you can see, there's not a lot of changes for Blood Mage in the patch notes. It's just Whispers of Flash will grant targets cursed, have 100% reduced life regeneration rate, which could be considered even like a small buff. But the big issue here coming from Atalu is Blood Latin Lineage support, which been a bread and butter for a lot of Blood Mage and caster builds. So Atalu Blood Latin will grant 2% extra physical damage per 20 life. Previously, it's been 2% per 10 life, up to 40%. So, in the current situation, Atalu's Blood Latin is getting nerfed pretty significantly, especially since you're losing a cost multiplier as well. So, it will be harder to get your cost up. It also will provide like less damage per life cost, which is a significant issue, and it's going to affect your damage a lot. So I believe the Blood Mage builds had a lot of damage before and they're probably going to survive, but considering that Deadeye is mostly receiving buffs, I believe that Blood Mage compared to it is probably going to be less popular at the moment. The biggest issue with Atalu's Blood Latin is not even the whole idea that it will be like not per 10 life cost but per 20. The biggest issue that Atalu never had a cap before. So as you can see, here's an Atalu support, you're getting like cost multiplier, and you can stack it as high as you can, especially if you have enough life. However, right now, after all the changes with Atalu's Blood Latin, you're going to get it unfortunately but capped, so up to 40%, and you can't stack it higher, so no 60, not 80, not 100, And I believe it's going to cap the damage that blood mages can get from Atalui significantly. And on top of that, GG also decided to nerf Arc, so at the moment Arc will have 50% increased magnitude of shock inflicted instead of 50% more magnitude of shock inflicted. So increased against more is a pretty decent nerf as well, because it's going to provide significantly less, unfortunately. And it will be hard to run around that as well. However, there's like a pretty nice bonus, which is mostly infusions. And infusions are going to get cool bonuses across all the board and almost everywhere when you can find them. So the biggest example for it is just the Comet skill, which got significant buff compared to what we had before. So Fire Infused Comet right now will deal almost double the damage. In that case, I believe GG wants us to use infusions significantly more active. Another interesting thing that's been buffed in 0.4 is Adorned. So as you remember, GG been changing Adorned before, and right now it's been like a 0 to 100% increased effect of jewels. But in 0.4 they're going to buff it to 150, and I think with that change there will be more reason to run Adorned in your builds, especially in the caster builds. So at the moment I don't think it's going to change all the builds because it's not looking that amazing, but it's good enough so it will find a way back until into some builds at the moment. Another interesting topic is just the new Ascendancies, like not completely new, but changed Ascendancies such as Pathfinder, and skills such as Vine Arrow and Toxic Grow, which GG changed a lot. So like Vine Arrow right now you'll get +1 to limit of plants at gems level 12 and 19, which is very good. Vine Arrow wasn't that popular before, but I think with that change it's probably going to take bigger part of the meta because it's looking very nice. And Toxic Growth, on other side, received a pretty decent nerf, because right now you will fire only 4 pastels instead of 8 pastels, which is practically 50% less effectiveness. But you will have like 100% of base attack speed, it's previously been 80, so it's not going to feel that bad, but the role of that skill is definitely going down. It's also lead to other poison skills, such as Araceli Lust. So Araceli Lust now will grant supported skill, deal 8% more damage with hits for each poison on the enemy, up to 40. It's been 30 before, so I think it's a pretty nice improvement, and it's probably going to lead to more variations of the builds that running with some options of poison. So on top of that, there's also a pretty important thing that should be mentioned. So rune sockets right now will be renamed to augment sockets, and augment talismans has been renamed to idols. And right now, most of those talismans will be limited to 1. So instead of running triple movement speed runes in your boots, or like triple attack speed runes in your gloves, or just like life runes everywhere, you will be limited to 1 for most of them. It's definitely going to affect the gameplay in general, but I believe it just nerfs to all the builds at the same time, because it will be much harder for you to utilize the runes after all those changes. So like almost all of them will be limited to 1 at the moment. However, since all the builds are going to be affected by that, we can just take it as it is and not over-focus on it, even if some builds been getting more bonuses from that. Especially, I believe, builds that been focusing on just stacking one things. So first off, we need to mention the Smith of Kitava, which in my opinion got like slightly buffed. I think right now it's probably going to be more popular due to some basic changes. It will have like additional armor, it will be easier to stack a lot of armor and use armor for elemental damage reduction as well, together with some additional cool bonuses, such as Thorns damage, for example. So Thorns build should feel a little better on Smith of Kitava right now. There have been also changes to Pathfinder, which looked pretty alright even before. So like Contagious Contamination and Practical Remedies are like removed. And running Assault will grant cannot be heavy stunned while sprinting, which is very nice quality of life thing. On top of it, you will also get like Path Thicker multi-choice Ascendancy passive skill, getting additional passive skill points together with that as well. So I think it will open interesting builds for Pathfinder, especially like caster builds, and Pathfinder is looking like Cyan from PoE1. I think Travel Wisdom will open a lot of possibilities for like death stacking builds, for additional damage for Pathfinder, and will make that Ascendancy significantly more popular. So Pathfinder is one of the biggest winners after all the changes. And there are small changes to Warbringer, Ritualist, which not going to affect the gameplay significantly. For the Titans, they removed Surprising Strength, and Crushing Impact will give 25% more damage against heavy stunned enemies. Before that, you needed to allocate Surprising Strength for it, but the percent itself is lower, so it will probably end up with a little less damage in general. There's also additional bonuses to Aftershocks, which are not going to be game-changing for the whole Ascendancy. And talking about the builds, I think another big winners which should be mentioned right now is Grenades and ED plus Contagion combination. I believe both ED and Grenades being completely untouched in 0.4, so most of the builds based on any of those are going to play in exactly the same fashion like it happened before, and probably, considering that other parts such as Blood Mage being nerfed, will provide a very decent experience, especially at the league start. That's pretty much it for the wrap-up, for the stuff that caught my eye almost immediately. Let me know in the comments what do you think about the changes, what you anticipated, and if you think that GG is going to reverse some of them back. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. ronarray out.